Okay, so we're going to look at list comprehensions in Python, and the first thing that we're going to do is create a list of strings. So we did this like really early on in the session. So here we go. Create a list of strings. So we're just going to take this list and we'll paste it down here, which now enables us to see our list of strings, which is just a list of names in our case. So we've got a list. And what we want to do, for example, is just say we want to extract all the names with the letter E in it. So we're going for all of these names. So there's an E in here, there's an E in here. So Alice, Bob, Charlie. Elsa doesn't get included because that's a capital E, so that one won't be included in the list. So basically we're going to go for all of those. So let's just try and do that then. And what we're going to do is we'll do a for loop to start with, and then for name, and this is a common pattern in names, and then we'll do an if statement if E is in name. Then the first thing we'll do is just print it, just to test that it all works. So print name. And this is our standard for loop. We see that it works. Now, well, in fact, I'll probably do a for loop to a list comprehension comparison. So we'll call this a classical for loop. And then down below, we will do a list. I'll probably move some of this away as well, just so we got a bit of space. A list comprehension. So that's our list comprehension example. So we've got both over here. And now we're going to try to do the same thing. But list comprehension is quite an interesting one because all we have to do is something like name for name in names. Now it looks relatively similar. If name, let's have a little think about that. If E is in name, if E in name. Now this looks like a whole list. Well, we've got the square bracket, so we've got a list. We've created a list, and then we've got name for name in names if E in names. Now let's just assign. This is standalone at this point in time, but what we actually see is we get this list that comes back straight away. Now here we haven't got a list that's come back straight away. What we've done is print name. So we've run it and we've checked it, and we're going to look at the comparison between the two. But what we do have to do, let's say we want to get them completely like for like. So we want to construct a new list with for all names with E in it. We'd need to do something like this. We'd need to say names with E is equal to, and then create a blank list, an empty list like this. And then with our old classical method, we would, instead of using the print statement, so we're going to comment that out, we would be able to do names with E dot append. And this would be our old method of dot append name, because we want to add the name in. And then afterwards we could print print names with E. So we could do something like that. So let's comment this one out over here. And when we run this, we now get Alice, Charlie, and Darren. So they are all the names that contain E in it. But we see we get the same with the list comprehension. And in fact, I'm going to tell you that the list comprehension is, according to just one or two web pages that I've seen, the list comprehension is about 10% faster than doing this old classical method. And the reason partly why is because you've got to do an append each time. So this is what like working in place. So let's just have a comparison of the two. One thing that we will do, just for the sake of it, so that they both got the variables and we can print them out so they look kind of like similar, is we can now print. So what we've done effectively in 4 lines of code, so 1, 2, 3 and 4 lines of code. Let's remove our print name now. So here's our lines of code. We've done 1 line of code to create this empty list. Then we've constructed this for loop. Then we've done an if statement to check whatever condition that we wanted to. And then we did an append over here. We were able to do this all in 1 line of code with our list comprehension over here. And we're going to take a look at the elements of them and see how they pan out. So let's just have a look. The first thing that we've got is we don't have a we haven't created an empty list. What we've actually done is name with E. So we've created a list in our classical loop, but here it's automatically come in. So effectively it's on 1 line, it's on the same thing. And the reason why is this points to the 2 empty brackets over here. In the top one, in the bottom one, we've got our 2 empty brackets over here. So there's our 2 empty brackets. Now, we go to the next part of it, and we have for name in names. And let's just put a little line there. We can see that for name in names, and this is the pattern that we look for, actually occurs. And in fact, the for statement also makes it into the comprehension. We've got for name in names. So nothing has actually really changed so far in our list comprehension. We've got the original variable created, and we had to do this with the classical for loop because we needed to create an empty list. We never needed to do that with the list comprehension. So that's mark number 1 positive for the list comprehension. Then we had for name in names in both. And then we had this if statement down below. I'll colour that in a different colour. Hopefully I don't run out of colours. I've only got 5 pens. But we've got the for name, if E in name. So if E is in name. And we see that we actually get the same pattern here. So we're able to completely replicate the for loop, but actually just using the 2 inner lines without needing to revert back to, and this is part of the key win, is that we never needed this with append. It's automatically assumed that the append has gone in here. So we don't see the append. So we're just appending by name. One thing that we do see is the actual name itself. So we see name, what we're appending, we actually see it over here. So we're going from, or at least our, what's in the yellow box here, which is the variable that we want to append to the list, that goes at the front. So whatever we want to append to the list, then we do our for loop. This name here is the dummy variable. So just like it is here, it's kind of the placeholder variable, not the dummy variable. So for name in names, and then we continue just like that. So these two achieve the same. We're kind of like told that they work. One works slightly faster than the other. So that's kind of like list comprehension in Python. I'm actually going to do a second part to this video because we're actually going to see that we can get more complicated, as in what we can do. I'll delete everything here and go to the pen. What we actually can do is we can, well, let's say for example we had another if statement. So if I in name. So now let's check that not only have we got an E in the name, but we've got an I in the name as well. Given that we've got an E in the name, can we find any of those? Like for example, Charlie might appear here, and we might just indent that over here like this. So the question is what happens in this scenario, because now we've rounded the top list down. Can we do the second thing in the list comprehension? And actually, like as a clue, one of the things that we can do is just put if E in name and I in name. So we just do a check for both. And let's just try and run that, and we see that we get the same. So we're just going to, so we see that the list comprehension is a very powerful tool. It's able to replicate the classical for loop. It's able to replicate the classical for loop actually in one line of code. We could, when it gets a bit more complicated, it might be better to revert back to the classical for loop. However, one thing that we could do in our list comprehensions is use a bit of indentation. So name for name in names. And then put this on the next line, if E in name, and then we could put even this one on the next line and I in name. So we can use our list comprehension quite powerfully. And the other thing that we can actually do is, if we didn't just want name for name in names, we could actually put a statement in here, although putting statements in list comprehensions will actually slow it down. So when we've got the append, this creates, so if I did that it would run, but we're just going to print the names in there. When we've got this classical pattern here, which is this create an empty list and then append the list, if our contents aren't too complicated, then it's a very good idea to be using a list comprehension. So that's basically it. That's list comprehensions in Python, which are a new feature, and it replaces having to do lists, and this is quite unique to the Python programming language, and quite an additional feature, and it also speeds up your code as well as tidying it up. So that's it. List comprehensions done.